Thank you. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me tonight to launch the new book from BOA Editions, Caw. And today's the pub date, and so it's wonderful that we're doing this with so many friends and fellow poets. Most of you are both. So I'm going to start reading. This poem is called Good Riddance Chicken. My wife still cooks some meals using my ex-girlfriend's recipes. Their familiar cursive once thrilling in those years of exchanging letters with their catalogs of arousal, divulging where we could taste each other on those weekends we managed to erase the distance between her home and mine. Maryland, Connecticut, I-95, driving through downpour or snow, blasting cranberries or counting crows. She prepared exquisite meals, artichoke heart souffle or bass fillets poached with fennel for my midnight arrival, cuddle dates with shallots for breakfast, then mailed the recipes so that I might, in her absence, recreate each savory morsel. Now my wife revises each directive, shunning grapes but adding orange wheels, or switching shiitake for wild chanterelle, purring with Rihanna on the radio, crossing out the name of each dish at the top of the creased index card to substitute one of her own invention, but growing quiet when she reads, again, looped at the bottom of her favorite recipe, the one for chilled Roquefort chicken, quote, always better when you add my company. So that became Good Riddance Chicken. And this is a poem, another sort of love poem called Dearest Creature. An octopus the size of a fist fell in love with a marine biologist, teasing her philtrum with the tip of a tentacle when cupped near her amused and curious face, curling another around one ear, probing her lips with a timid third. The rest encircled her left hand, stroking the brilliant wedding band. Giddy with pleasure, the creature flashed colors like a living gem before the long unfastening. That octopus one night unscrewed the steel, a star-punched lid of its tank to comb the corridors of the lab. When in the morning she found that rag, she wept at love's barbed lure. How far we urge ourselves to travel, to nuzzle a breast, tongue a navel, or fondle even a wisp of fur below the belly of a lover. The middle section of this book is a sequence of 25 poems that has to do with my mother's dementia. I'd never written a sequence before. I'd certainly never written anything like this before. I can talk about this after the reading a bit with Peter Connors, who's here. I'll just read 4 of these poems, 2 from the beginning and 2 from the close to try to give you a sense of them. Domestic disturbance. I'm calling the police, she'd shriek before my father gentled the phone from her fist. I'll break every dish in his house, she'd howl, shards of pinwheeling hardwood floors. Face slapper, spitball of spite, crying out at night, you never touch me. Why didn't my father pillow her mouth, burn down the house, Chevrolet us away? How it wounds her now to revive the past. Mom, I prod, What else have you lost? Minecraft. Mother in dementia, crying into the wilderness, into the imponderable coils of the landline, too upset to say why she's calling. Just tell him, a voice insists. Her grandson is missing. No one can find him. The residents, the staff, have scavenged each bathroom, storage closet, the parking lot of her memory care facility. Mom, I say, he's here. But don't tell her he's building pyramids, block by block, secret chambers, labyrinths, impossible to negotiate. Thank God, she sobs, collapsing in relief. Next visit, I ask, wasn't everyone angry? Wheelchairs gridlocked in corridors, his name hawked into tumblers. No, she says, what's wrong with you? We were all so happy. We found him. This is Icon. When you tumble in the shower, I rush right over and praise whomever. No bones broken, only shaken, and you shrunken in your blue bathrobe. Aides and nurses wandering off to never-ending dismal duties, to neighbors too to rehearse routine, unlovely idiosyncrasies. Slumped on the couch, you lean against me, then slowly unfold the crumpled parchment of your body to lie across my lap. If anyone returns, they'll see living sculpture, almost familiar, son and mother, perverse Pieta. And this is the final poem in the sequence, Avian Elegy. Then my mother grew smaller, the length of a wooden clothespin. Wrapped in tissue, she lay upon the birdcage floor, surrounded by seeds. Someone had stolen the bird bath from our yard, wrested the concrete basin from its pillar, the pillar from the kingdom of earthworms. My mother had nowhere to go, no rainwater to slake her thirst, to absolve her. I wore her feathered cloche, surrendered to the silence stunning the trees. I'm turning the mirror, mother. I'm turning the mirror off. And then that last poem of the middle sequence segues really into the first poem of the final sequence. This poem came from an article that I saw in the New York Times. Here's a quote from that article that serves as an epigraph to the poem. Birds called pithes, sold across Senegal for a dime, are believed to carry away sins when set free. Red-billed firefinch. I whisper sins into empty birds to then set them free. So many sins, pithes untold. I watch them wing the sins away. I buy finches from vendors in makeshift stalls, exotics in cages like sins in souls, touch lips to plumage where ears must be, then flick my finger to let loose each bird. Have you heard my sins, scarlet flocks wheeling, unbound from my body? Have you witnessed modest comets arcing trees, a feathery fireballs of forgiveness, a plump pithes, a looping back now to hook claws within me? Here's what's essentially the title poem of the book. This is a poem called One Caw. This is a poem that was written before the Black Lives Matter movement, but it seems so pertinent at this particular moment. One Caw. Against the snow, their silhouettes, these crows. How many hundreds burdening branches, these blunt scissors and construction paper kindergarten cutouts, these Rorschach blots, sloppy calligraphy, or jagged wounds, the sky torn, but not political, if that's possible. Then a blast scatters the murder, and any direction they flee is wrong. Smoke on the hillside. The soldier stares, rifle tensed on one shoulder. He's looking me over, wondering who I am. I've seen this scene in films, Russian novels, old master oils, Pathé newsreels, or on CNN. Smoke in the city, school children scattered among rubble, if that's possible. Or blue sky, shade trees, suburban sprawl. The police car stops. The boy stares. How many hundreds? One caw, then silence. Something horrible about to happen. And then the book moves towards its close with some what are essentially self-elegies. This is called Good Dead Person. Please don't inscribe my name on a tombstone or place there a passage from my favorite book. I have no favorite book. Please don't chisel dates on my Please don't buy me a tombstone. Please don't plant flowers on my grave. I have no favorite flower. I have allergies. Please don't visit when the leaves redden or snow whirls or crocuses lift their purple cups. Please don't circle the date on the calendar to mark the anniversary of my death. Don't say 6 years gone or 12 years gone. When our children mention my name, insist that you don't remember me. Tell them you remember nothing but my love, always there, like the moon over Malta, Romania, the Dominican Republic. So I'm not sure where these particular poems originate. I'm 70 now, and there's the old joke about having one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. And of course, there's all this floating anxiety in the air, the virus now, but always, always Trump and the election that's coming up, and the fires that are going on in California, and so many other things that keep us stressed and wondering, I think, about our own mortality. So this poem is called Ashes, and I'll read this. This will be the last poem that I read, but it does have a postscript that I'll read. Ashes. Maybe you'll ask our sun to scatter a few ounces of your ashes near the Ukrainian border, where the body of the unknown saint, unearthed by monks hunting mushrooms almost 2 centuries ago, refuses to shed its fragrant flesh, which assumes the spongy texture of tallow. A young girl hiking countryside during the communist regime, you cradled the obscene head and kissed those yellow lips, then ate a meal of soup and bread, hunched alone at a rough-hewn table. Despite that gesture of devotion, the monastery will never claim fragments of your female frame. Some believers have wealth enough to satellite ashes into space, nearer, my God, to thee. But that would be a waste of money. One ambitious entrepreneur presses ashes into CDs which preserve the voice of the deceased. So you could leave a farewell sound, a ghosting within that round and impossibly thin, unfashionable a mausoleum. Or you might task our son with travel to sow your ashes among the snowdrops. Snowdrops, always your favorite flower, lighting cemeteries near your home, not far from the Ukrainian border. And this is a little postscript to ashes. The small heap of my ashes, love, will be sieved into an anatomically precise, life-size, rubber dildo, which you should wield dexterously to pleasure yourself while thinking of me watching you through the peephole of my halo. Thank you. Hi, Peter.
I feel super creepy dropping in at that moment, but hey, Michael, it's so good to see you.
Imagine what the house feels like.
Congratulations on the pub date for CAW. Today is the official pub date for the book.
Thank you.
Is, as you know, and as some people out there might know, BOA has a continuum series that we publish our books on. So every continuum book in that series carries a number. And this is continuum number 181. And do you know which continuum number your first BOA book was, Michael?
Number 4.
Number 4.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? So 177 books published since then, 6 of them by you with BOA editions. And this is the most recent one. So I wanted to ask you, Michael, a question going to the epigraph, and it's going to be like a 2-part question. But I was drawn to, and in fact, having you read Ashes makes this particularly relevant, I think. The epigraphs, you have one from William Carlos Williams and one from Allen Ginsberg. So from Williams, you have from Crude Lament, Mother of Flames, you have kept the fire burning. And then you have Ginsberg from the beautiful end of Kaddish, Lord, 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 caw, 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 Lord, 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 caw, 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 Lord. So my question is 2 parts. One is that how do those, there's a lineage there, obviously, right, from Williams to Ginsberg, and I'm curious how you see that lineage relating to your own poetry, and also how those particular epigraphs relate to caw specifically.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll start with the last question first then. The William Carlos Williams one, Mother of Flames, you have kept the fire burning. It really leads into that middle section that has to do with my mother's dementia, which has its own epigraph from Edgar Allan Poe and the Fall of the House of Usher. And I won't read that epigraph, it's a few sentences long, but he speaks about being underground below the House of Usher in the vaults. And while there are no windows there, and it should be utterly dark, nevertheless, there's light there. And he doesn't understand what the source of that light is. And for me, that connects with my mother's madness, that source of light inside of her that's informing her, but that I have really no access to at all. I don't understand what's happening there then. And I also think of anyone's creativity and what it is, where that comes from and what informs that. That has to do too with some sort of light that we're not always able to turn on or off, but that's always there. So there's a connection there for me too between art and madness. And Ginsberg's poem comes from, as you said, it's the last line of his lamentation for his dead mother, his Kaddish then. And so it also connects with that middle section. But the title of the book, Caw, has for me, one, it's a cry of warning, as it is in that poem, One Caw, but it's also a cry of lamentation for what happens to my mother, for what's happening to all of us in different ways right now. Then it also has that word awe in it, which suggests wonder at all that happens to us and at the creative process, I think, itself. And even the word core, C-O-R-E, suggesting something at the center of our being that has to do too with creativity and with whatever else might inform us and inform our personalities. I mean, it's where art and love and madness, I guess, where they originate. So that kind of a core as well. So, and I want to say too that when I was 16 years old, I was lucky enough to hear Allen Ginsberg read at Town Hall. And after the reading, I met him and Peter Orlovsky outside. He asked me if I would come to his apartment for soup. And I said no, but he gave me his phone number. And for a while, I was walking around New York City thinking, wow, I'm the only boy in New York with Allen Ginsberg's phone number. And then somebody pointed out to me that actually it was in the phone book. You could just look it up. So, but yeah, he's always been important to me. And I came to poetry through the beats like Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti. And it wasn't until I went to college in '67 when I was 17 that I had a professor who showed me formalists, you know, Richard Wilbur, W.D. Snodgrass. And so I had that now to balance against some of the beats. And I still very much love and very much a fanboy of all of those poets.
You know, and it's interesting too, is sort of going off of particularly the last poem that you read, the One Ka poem, and we talking of some about politics and social engagement in poetry, and of course Allen Ginsberg was a big part of his poetics as well. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on the place of poetry today, related to the political and social climate that we're existing in.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, for myself, I take a very, very long time to process things. And I wish that I could simply go ahead and engage the moment and write poems that engage the moment. And when I turn on my computer each morning, I see a number of those poems right away. I'm not sure that they're good poems. I think, you know, I often very much agree with the politics that they express. But finally, I'm reading them, I think, for their content. And I'm not seeing the aspects of craft that I would like to see. Some people can do that very quickly. I'm not one of those people. Even that poem, One Ka, I think really it sprang out of the murder of Trayvon Martin. But it was written some years after that murder then. So I don't know what's going to come out of this finally. Speaking for myself, I think I'm going to wind up writing about this stuff if I live long enough and can process it. In the meantime, I'm grateful for other people trying to engage it right away. One problem, though, is I remember Richard Wilbur speaking, I think it was in his Paris Review interview, and he said that writers must always write out of all aspects of personality. And what I see happening now is writers writing out of anger only. And I feel that anger as well. But when I feel that anger to such a degree, it almost keeps me from writing about that. I want to go in another direction then. But I know people feel very differently about this, and I'm grateful to those poets who are addressing this right now.
And I wonder, you know, I was going to ask you a question about the aesthetic of this book, or what sort of artistic movement there is in this book that you feel distinguishes it from your past books. And I guess along with that too, related to our conversation, do you see these poems, or maybe even this whole collection, through a different lens than when it was written, now that we're in the days that we're in?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I'll say, first of all, about craft. For myself, how poems are written is at least as important as what the poems have to say. And I felt that way for a long time. And I know a number of my former students are out there, and they've heard me say this many times before. But I believe in clarity, that clarity remains a virtue in poetry. I believe that poems should be written line by line. I believe in the integrity of the line, that the line should be a unit unto itself, that it should be a consequence of all the lines that came before it, and it should anticipate the lines that follow it. I think also the line should have a beginning, middle, and end, and it should stand on its own. Even out of context, I think outside of the poem, it should be an interesting, maybe even a mysterious line. I also believe that poems should have rich musical phrasing, a lot of syllables clamoring together, and I believe that poems should always be deeply felt. So with the poems that are in the middle section of the book, those poems about my mother's dementia, something new happened for me then. And while those poems are still written line by line, and the line is the integral unit of the poem, what's happening there is that the phrase became the integral unit of the line. And that was stunning to me. And when I realized I could approach the poems that way, I was looking for a way in. I didn't know I was going to write a sequence. I was trying to write about my mother's dementia. But finally, I realized that that dementia needed a different form. And so having those phrases individualize themselves, having negative space, that negative space between them, which suggests the hesitation of me writing about this subject, the hesitations that anyone with dementia has to experience, and that fragmentation of thought. All of a sudden, the poems then came very, very quickly for me, and it was a very exciting time for me to be writing them. Not too many poems in this book are political, I don't think. A lot of the poems are love poems, before and after. A lot of the poems are confronting mortality then. I think maybe I'd have to look through the book again. One Caw might be an anomaly in this book, but I hope to have more poems like that in the future. And I do have some new poems, I think, that lean toward that. But really, I just don't know. I never know where poems come from. And the more I write, it seems like the less I know about the art. And so I get finished with a poem, and I always think, I'm so happy, right? I have a new poem. But my next immediate thought is, how did I write that? And the next thought is, will I ever be able to write another poem? Because if I knew what I was doing, I could write one right now, but I can't, you know? Maybe other people can, and I envy them.
So I'm going to ask a question off. If anybody wants to post a question, you can type it into the Q&A section, and I'll read what comes up here to Michael. So there's one from Allison Myers. Hello, Allison. And she says, who are the poets you turn to for inspiration?
Oh, thanks, Allison. Hi. Well, BOA has been celebrating Lucille Clifton, and Lucille Clifton is just terrifically important to me. She's one of those very few poets who teaches you how to read her while you're reading her. And I know many people have approached her work, and right away they find her slight, or they go through the poems very, very quickly. And they think, well, what's this all about? But if you slow down and read the poems really through her voice, manage to hear her voice in your head, and see how those poems always connect with each other and breathe with each other and speak with each other. She forms a community of poems, and she writes about that notion of community and kin. And so she, for me, is a very exciting poet. And right now I'm reading this wonderful poet, Denisha Lamaris, whose second book just came out with the University of Pittsburgh Press. I don't know, there are just so many wonderful poets. I go back to Seamus Heaney. I'm afraid I'm going to forget so many poets if I start naming them, many friends among them. But if I name people who are no longer alive, like Lucille Clifton, I think of the recently deceased Maxine Cumin. I think of Louis Simpson, whose work taught me so much. William Carlos Williams is always amazing. Emily Dickinson, that fierce intelligence there in those tiny little poems, just an astonishing poet then. I don't know, just a lot of folks. The thing is to read voraciously, and I read a lot of stuff that I don't like, but I always want to articulate to myself what it is about the work that I don't like, because I can learn as much from a book that I don't like as from a book that I do.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna ask you, oh, something just happened. Can you still hear me, Michael?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I'm assuming everybody is here with us still. Let's see. Yes, they are. So what I want to do is thank you for being here with us tonight. And let everybody know that CAW is now available, and you can get it through ampersandbooks.org, which is Writers and Books' new bookstore that we are also here to celebrate. And we thank Writers and Books for teaming up with BOA to do this series. We're going to do readings every Tuesday at this time with a different BOA author for the next 5 weeks or so. And Michael, you are the first one. So thank you for being here. I'd love if you're willing to end with a poem or two.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Thank you. And thanks all of you for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. I know I'll be hearing from some of you, but it really means a lot to me that you're out there tonight, especially during this time. So thank you so much. Let me end with a poem. Although I had mentioned to Peter before that maybe we would do this, it hadn't occurred to me. Here, I can read this anti-Trump poem. This is for my son, who was 10 years old when this took place. This is a poem from the book called Electric Fence, and it was written during the first year of this current presidency. He dared me to touch my finger to the fence which we've been warned against. Its wire whining mutely sparked my fingertip. And he recalled the science teacher's lesson about current and conduction. So grasped my hand and squinched his lids, and I prodded the wire once more. We yelped as the splinter of lightning tore through my limbs into his. 4 cows eyeing us drooled deep indifference. Next, he coaxed his reluctant mom to affix herself to this human chain. Now the electricity needled us, a stitching red thread through all 3 of us, and could have leapt across country, citizen to citizen, unstoppably, but instead fused fast our DNA, the DNA of our stricken and still smoldering family. So thank you very much, and good night to everyone.